In the last video, I did the body work, primed, painted, and then masked off the body and painted the secondary color, and eventually ended up with a final coat of clear. Now that clear was not the final clear, so I wasn't really going for a super smooth and nice finish. In this video, I'm going to be sanding that back smooth as possible for all the decals to be applied on top of the black areas, and then later on, of course, a new coat of clear on the entire body. Now I'm scuffing this up to get a good bond between the new clear coat and the old one, and also to get a nice smooth surface, which makes it a lot easier to get a nice smooth finish in the end. So as mentioned, and some of you probably already know, this car has a lot of carbon fiber options, and when speccing one in real life, and I have enough money, which I of course don't, I would spec all of the carbon possible, as I really like the way that it looks. Now in this case, it is also a split carbon. That is a carbon that is split down the middle and goes in two different directions. So I need to make some patterns for both halves, one on the left, one on the right, of course, and then also mark it off, making sure that the pattern is nice and conform to the shape, and also has the correct weave pattern on the template itself, so that I can transfer that onto the decal sheet, matching that and having that nice split down the middle later on when applying the decals, of course. And all the parts that line up to this or on one half of the car need to have the same weave direction as well, so it's important to keep that in mind when doing this and marking every single panel off with the correct weave direction, so you can't make a mistake there. All of the templates have now been created with the masking tape and marker, so it's time to apply the decals. I've shown this a couple of times in the videos before and have several how-tos, so I'm not really going to go all that in depth, but it is also nice to see a little bit of a time lapse here and there, so I figured why not. I'm applying some decal setting solution underneath the decals to help adhere the decal to the body itself, and also to make it a bit more conformable as it softens the decal slightly as well. The first half is placed generally in position, then the second half is placed as well, and then I carefully need to take my time to align both of them perfectly together. Once I'm happy with the position they both have, I lock down the center. I'm doing this with a cotton swab, a Q-tip, whatever you want to call it, just to get a little bit of the moisture from out underneath the decals and have them stick a bit better in place. Now it is important to lock that center, as these patterns need to match up perfectly to each other, and these need to stay there. So I'm paying extra attention with these parts not moving and having the proper position on the panel itself to keep that pattern matching up, and just keep going over them over again and again just to make sure they don't move. So the pattern is now matched up and locked in the middle pretty firmly. I just keep going over it again and again, as I mentioned, and also starting to form them with a bit of heat. I'm just using a hair dryer that gives a little bit of heat and speeds up the drying process, and also the process of the decal setting and softening solutions. I keep applying the decal setting solution on top until I'm happy with the general shape that the decals have, and then for the rougher work I will move over to the decal softening solution later on. While doing this, I'm still adding the heat with a hair dryer. This does speed up the process. You can do it without. That is all personal preference. It's also important to note that the cotton swab that I'm using is a little bit wet, as that makes it a little bit less sticky to the decals, and also it helps to apply the decal when rolling it over the surface and not dragging it over, as when you're dragging it over it can take the decal with it, and when rolling it over it just gently pushes it in place and doesn't really move the decal all that much. Also try to avoid some of the creases that are created in the decal once applying them with the cotton swab, as when you're pressing them down you can probably press the crease together and leave a bigger imprint in it. The decal softening solution should push these out and create a smooth surface, so just use some decal softening solution instead with a brush and heat it up, and they will just gently start removing themselves. With the first couple panels down, it's time to move on to the next couple of panels and just keep going until all of them are covered in pretty much the same manner. With the roof now finished in decals, it is time to cut out the panel lines. Now the decals are placed on top of these panel lines, so they cover them up and aren't really showing as much detail as I'd like. So the decals have been drying for a bit, and also the hairdryer just sped up that process. I'm using a super sharp new blade for all of this and just cutting them out one by one. After carefully cutting out all these panel lines out, it's time to move on to some more decal softening solution to have these edges fold into the panel line and create a nice clean crisp line. With that first section on the roof now finished, it's time to move on to these bucket surrounds on the headlights. Now these were a bit more complicated to template, but in the end I got there with multiple pieces of tape and also some marker, of course, as well, getting them in position and marking them out, then moving them over to the decal sheet, cutting them out, and starting to apply the decals one by one. After finishing off these buckets, I moved on to some air inlets on the side and also one of the beauty panels around the engine bay as well. Once that was completed, I let the decals sit and cure overnight and then moved on to clear coating. For the clear coating stage, I'm going over the decals first just to give them an initial tack and also get used to the clear coat and accept the second layer a bit better. As if you're going over them for the first time really heavily, it can just glide off the decal and create a really nasty looking finish. So I would always advise to give a nice first thin coat to the decals and then move over them in a second coat with a bit of a heavier coat and go over the rest of the body as well, of course. With the decals now having received their first initial coat, I'm also just moving along for initial coat on the rest of the body as well while I'm at it. The first coat is now applied. It's already looking nice and smooth. As I said at the beginning of the video, the clear coat prior was sanded smooth, so the clear coats following go on a lot smoother and create a nice finish pretty much instantly. So after about 5 minutes, I filled up the airbrush again with some more clear and topped it off with a second coat, getting it as smooth as I possibly could. After applying the second coat of clear, the clear coating and painting for the body is completed, along with the carbon fiber work, of course. Now, carbon fiber still needs to be applied to a lot more parts like the front splitter, rear diffuser, even the mirrors maybe. I'm thinking of doing the spoiler as well as a lot of the air intakes. These all need a lot of attention, and that needs to take a bit of time too. So if you guys want to see a video on all of these separate parts being applied with carbon fiber decals, let me know down in the comments below. In the next video, I will probably stay away from the carbon fiber for the exterior parts a bit and move on to the interior. This does need a bit of carbon fiber here and there, but not too much. So let me know down in the comments below what you think of the color and the carbon fiber, and what you want to see in the coming videos for this build series as well.